morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Now, as I'm sure many of you are aware, for quite some time now, there's been a small but vocal group of movie fans who have been waging a campaign to find a role worthy of Idris Elba on the big screen. And the roles they've come up with so far are Jon Stewart, aka Green Lantern in the DC Cinematic Universe, Black Panther in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and James Bond, aka 007. Now, I think they're all a good fit. I think Idris Elba is a wonderful actor, and he would really bring a lot to all three iconic roles. But I think he is a very good fit for James Bond, and an exciting choice, because he would not only bring something new to that lead role, diversity, but at the same time he has all of the qualities that are classic Bond. So it's something new and old. I mean, it doesn't change the fundamental aspects of the character except for his skin color. And in today's society, that shouldn't be a big deal, right? Because, Idris Elba has the accent, he has the physique, and he has the charisma. And it's not a ridiculous discussion to be having in terms of replacing Daniel Craig, because Daniel Craig himself has been very vocal about not playing James Bond for much longer. He signed on for 2 more films. He's Bond 24 and 25. 24 is getting ready. It's supposed to come out in 2015. Sam Mendes is returning to direct. He said maybe he wouldn't, and then I'm sure the Broccoli's, who run the Bond franchise, were like, what's it going to take money-wise to get you back on board? So he's back, and of course they want to duplicate also Skyfall's success, the first Bond film to ever join the billion-dollar club. But still, even though the Broccoli's and the people behind the Bond franchise on a whole probably aren't themselves thinking about a replacement, even though we are, and 2 years, at least 2 years, 2015 is Bond 24, who knows when 25 will come out, so also who knows where Idris Elba's career will be at that point. I think that this is a role he'd want to take on now. But Daniel Craig is still using it. But anyway, the Broccoli's, I think, have their ear to the ground. I think every studio has their ear to the ground these days, because the internet gives the fans and moviegoers a voice like never before. And they do seem to be bringing diversity to Bond 24 in a different way, with the next best thing, a black actor to play the villain. And the person they have in mind is Chiwetel Ejiofor. He is a hot commodity right now, huh? He's wanted for this Bond film, and he's also been wanted for Star Wars. At least he was talking to J.J. Abrams. But to have his name come out like this for this Bond 24 to play the villain the same year that the Star Wars film comes out makes me feel he didn't get whatever Star Wars role he was in discussions for. But still, he now has a contact with J.J. Abrams and is clearly on J.J. Abrams' radar. So I think Chiwetel Ejiofor will be a great choice for this, and he's also a UK actor. He's very good. If you've seen him in 12 Years a Slave, he's obviously very good, nominated for a slew of awards for that. But I would also suggest you check out a recent miniseries he did. It aired on Starz in the United States, called Dancing on the Edge. If you're a Downton Abbey fan, it's a little bit like that. It's about a group of black jazz musicians in London, England at that period. The Downton Abbey period. It's like I think in the 1920s, obviously when jazz was big, I believe. And it's a very good mystery thriller and social commentary on race relations at that period in the UK. Very good, and Chiwetel Ejiofor is fantastic in the role. It's a different side of him for those of you who've only really seen him in films like Salt in 2012, that disaster film, and also 12 Years a Slave, obviously, which he's very good in, but he's very, very British in Dancing on the Edge. He's very good in the film. But it's a couple of interesting things going on here. But first, let's just mention that he wouldn't be the first black villain in a Bond film. There is in To Live and Let Die. I looked it up. That's a Roger Moore James Bond film, so not one of the Live and Let Die is a pretty well-known James Bond title. But I don't think it's one of the more famous James Bond films. But here we had Dr. Kananga, and I think they tied in some aspects. I'm not quite sure. I'd have to look into it a little bit more. But I think the Black Panthers, right, were involved in this. But anyway, he was the main villain in To Live and Let Die. So it's not the first time it's been done, but it didn't really stick. It's not an iconic James Bond villain. Of course, we all loved what Javier Bardem did with his iconic villain in Skyfall. So I think that and with Sam Mendes still on board, I think Chiwetel Ejiofor would be given a really good role that wouldn't seem like he was just there as a token. And I hope it doesn't just play off of this Dr. Kananga is like, oh, he's an African warlord or a Caribbean warlord. It really plays into those aspects instead of he's just a villain he's a typical James Bond villain who just happens to be black. I think that would be ideal. But we'll see what kind of role Chiwetel Ejiofor gets, who is a UK talent. The other thing that's interesting here, I think, speaks to a larger trend, is that you have these really big franchises, and now that you're seeing the disappearance of star power, that it's not the actors who get people into the theater, but the property, you're seeing directors use that that as an opportunity to cast prestige actors who aren't a box office draw, but are critical darlings. And this is an interesting kind of movie structure that's coming together. You'll also see this with Colin Firth, we discussed just recently in the Secret Service film. Because Chiwetel Ejiofor, he might be an Academy Award nominated actor, but he's still not a box office draw. But what you're really doing here is, you're having your audience come in to see the spectacle, to see the property. You're having them come in to see a Marvel movie. You're having them come in to see Star Wars, etc. But then by casting well-known actors, instead of unknowns, by casting these prestige actors who are critical darlings, you're kind of ensuring that you're going to get good reviews as well. It's really a brilliant plan. Captain America worked around this, though, by the way. They don't have any really prestige actors in that film. Chris Evans just decided to become a better actor, supposedly, or just finally got the right material. Everybody does a very good job there, and that's an interesting case of blockbuster level actors stepping up their game and being given great material. But this is a different way to go. This is, I think to some degree you could say that Skyfall used this. They had, Judi Dench, Ralph Fiennes, or Ralph Fiennes. We always argue about how to pronounce his name. Javier Bardem. You have a really, a prestige cast, and I think that helps Skyfall get great reviews and great box office. And then also, if people are on the fence, you can go, well, hey, it's going to be well acted because look who's in the film. So it's a really new frontier in terms of blockbusters. And while we've been talking a lot about the death of the movie star, and the media's been talking about the death of the movie star because it's the properties that get people into the box office, this is a nice way that it's been turned into a positive, a way for these actors who aren't box office draws to get to play in the big leagues and perhaps become box office draws. Who knows? I think the jury is still out as to whether or not the movie star is dead. But anyway, that's the first story of the day, and I'm curious to how you guys feel. What do you think of Chiwetel Ejiofor being potentially the James Bond villain? Do you think he would just make a good villain on his own as an actor, as a talent? And also, what do you think? Do you agree that Idris Elba would make a great James Bond? And do you think that when we talk a lot about diversity, it usually is in terms of black and white. But do you think that with so much that's being done, we're going to talk about another two African American comedians who have a great opportunity in the next story? Do you think this is slowly going to open the door? Maybe women are starting to get more roles, and also for Asian and Latino talent. Do you think that is going to be the next frontier, and how far away do you think that is? Because we're picking up considerable speed with diversity in terms of, as I said, black and white. So let's move on to the second story, Key and Peele. A lot of Key and Peele fans. I'm not familiar with their work. As a matter of fact, when I recently reported about one of them, you guys were said, hey, you just saw him on Modern Family the other night, and you said he did a good job. So they're very funny. They come from Mad TV. I have seen some of their sketches online, but they just got a big deal. New Line has brought them on board to reboot the Police Academy franchise. And I think that's probably based off of the success of 21 Jump Street. 22 Jump Street's coming out. A lot of heat on that project. And also the success of Ride Along, that Kevin Hart Ice Cube film. Did extremely well. And for a while it was one of the highest grossing movies of the year out of the gate. So I think that New Line probably looked at all those elements that were in play in the box office market and said, why don't we bring back Police Academy? Now, no word yet on whether or not Key and Peele will star in the film. I find it hard to believe they would not. But they're definitely going to produce it. But that's good, because that means they're going to be in charge of the kind of comedy that's on display. So they have a lot of stuff going on for them. I believe they're entering their third season on Comedy Central's their Key and Peele show. But also, a lot of us are looking forward to that Fargo miniseries on FX. They are going to be playing FBI detectives there. And now they have this coming along. And it's going to be a whole class, just like the first Police Academy films, a whole class of students, trying to join the boys in blue, or the men and women in blue at this point. So they said they're going to try and find a lot of up and coming comedic talent to put on display. So you're not going to have an exact duplicate of 21 Jump Street just with Key and Peele in the roles. You're going to have more of an ensemble team comedy, and so maybe some diversity there as well. But I'm curious to what you guys think. I think Police Academy at this point, the films got so bad and they're from so long ago that I think that New Line might be making a bad bet in terms of they have any name recognition to build on that's already built in. I think they're going to have to basically start from scratch. As I said, not only because of the time that's passed since the other Police Academy films, but that I think it didn't go out on a good note. I think it's most famous for being something that Steve Guttenberg kind of started out in. I've never seen a Police Academy film. I'm wondering, for those of you who have, do you think it's something that can be modernized, brought up to date, or do you think it's just it's not a good idea and really wouldn't work with today's audiences. And do you think Key and Peele are a good choice for this? So that's the second story of the day. I'm curious what you guys think of that. Now let's move over to the third story, which also will tie into the viewer question, because somebody asked me specifically about this story. And that's that Lily Rabe, who plays Commander Lime in Mockingjay, the Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, has had to drop out of the second film because of it's a conflict to her commitment to Shakespeare in the Park, Much Ado About Nothing. And so they said, well, you can't obviously work with our schedule, so we're going to have to recast your role. And they've cast Gwendolyn Christie, aka Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones, Jaime Lannister's new buddy. I think she's great on that show. I'm like, Jaime Lannister, dump your sister and go out with Brienne. You guys are an awesome couple. That's who I'm shipping right now. That's who I'm rooting for. But it's great to see another Game of Thrones talent get a great film role outside of that show. So I'm excited for Gwendolyn Christie, and I think she'll make a fantastic Commander Anything, because I think she does a really good job as a female knight in the Game of Thrones television show on HBO. But it's interesting for the fact that Lily Rabe. So I guess let me bring in the question now, because it's so part and parcel. It's the same. The discussion covers the answer to the question. So Case KTV said, so I'm wondering a bit about Hollywood contracts, agreements, and just plain loyalty. I just saw the Lily Rabe American Horror Story. That's where she has her fans from. I just saw that Lily Rabe dropped out of Mockingjay for her commitments to Shakespeare in the Park with Hamish Linklater. That's a very small actor. I think he's most well known for the New Adventures of Old Christine, although he was very funny on that show. And the role has now gone to Gwendolyn Christie from Game of Thrones. And I'm just wondering, do things like plays hold a better prestige in the acting community than big budget movies, or is there a loyalty thing to be involved in productions and companies with movies or such? Basically, Case KTV is just really surprised that Lily Rabe would turn down a $1.5 billion property, he says, or he or she says, to go for this Shakespeare in the Park, which was going to be seen by much fewer people. And it would be a great stepping stone after all she's achieved with Ryan Murphy's American Horror Story. That's what Case KTV is saying. So at the end, Case KTV says, just also, are decisions like this in Hollywood common? Can't imagine I'd turn down ever even being an extra in the Hunger Games. And then Bamboo seconded it, saying, that's a good question. I hope Grace answers it. So how could I not? All right, so what's going on here? I think, first of all, it's really bad for them to have to replace the actor. I mean, often we hear about, you heard the same thing came out with the Twilight films, the redheaded, I don't even remember her name anymore. That's how bad it was for her career. Bryce Dallas Howard came in and Rachel Lefevre, I believe it was. She had a commitment to a film with a bigger part, so she said, I can't film with your Twilight schedule. So they were like, you're not that important to our story. See ya, we're bringing somebody else in. And so I think that to some degree, that's what happened here. You're talking about such a secondary character that they decided, we're just going to recast. Now, at the same time, we all know they're having a problem with Philip Seymour Hoffman and his tragic death and how they have to deal with that going into production on their second film, and the fact that he can't obviously film. So to have two replaced people, and this also happened, don't forget, with Katie Holmes and being replaced by Maggie Gyllenhaal. It does happen. It happened in the Mummy films with Maria Bello filling in for Rachel Weisz. Sometimes there are two scenarios. One, an actor tries to get more money. An actor felt they weren't well received in the role. They don't want to come back. So the studio just decides to move on without them and recast. It usually happens with female characters, which is a little frustrating, especially because it's like, it's not the same person. And, how can everybody just act like it is? But sometimes you don't have a choice. So that's one instance. It's a power trip from the actor, or, it just doesn't work out. But I think here, as I said, I think it's a mistake to have all changing, like a rotating level of cast, especially since Hunger Games isn't going beyond Mockingjay Part 2. So why for the last one would you drop continuity? I think it's more of a situation where Lily Rabe committed to Shakespeare in the Park, can't really drop out of that because she's going to make everybody upset there. I think it does help her prestige as an actor. Who knows who's involved behind the scenes. And then also I think I would have, as the producers of Hunger Games, I would have switched the schedule around to allow her to do both, but perhaps their bigger stars like Jennifer Lawrence and Josh Hutcherson can't work with that schedule, so they're stuck. Or maybe it would cause a delay in the film's release in terms of making sure they had enough time in post in terms of quality. So they're just like, we're just going to replace you with somebody else. Sorry. So I'm sure there are sore feelings on both sides. It hurts Lily Rabe not to be involved in the second film. I think it is a big setback for her. She's probably surprised that they did this, would be my guess. because you didn't see a comment from them, and you didn't see a comment from either camp. No one was like, "We're so sorry to see her go." That sure sucks. They were just like, "Whatever, we're replacing her. Let's not discuss it anymore." So, and I think obviously it hurts the film not to have that person there. Now, in terms of Hollywood, to KTV's thing about loyalty and contracts and such. Hollywood's a tough place. There's a really interesting article about why nobody ever says no in Hollywood, and Hollywood Reporter from last week. I'll put a link to it in the video description, because nobody ever knows how things are going to turn out. That's the short of the article. It's like, if I say no, you'll remember that no. But if I say yes and just never follow up on it, we still are kind of friends, and I can come back to you without being embarrassed, and you can come back to me, etc. It's like kind of leaving a door open. So I don't think that this is going to hurt anybody's career to the point where they're like, you're never going to work again. And it's obviously, the real winner here is Gwendolyn Christie, who's going to be coming into a big franchise and moving up to movies. But I think contracts, sometimes they're broken. People fight over them all the time. And I think the bottom line is nobody in Hollywood wants to be litigious. I think that contracts to some degree don't hold a ton of weight in Hollywood because nobody wants to be known for suing people. I think that's actually a really unfortunate aspect of the business. But if someone says, I'm not going to honor your contract, you really have to make a long, hard decision if you want to be in the papers having sued producers. Because then other producers in the future will be like, maybe we don't want to hire you. So who knows what her contract was. It basically became a scheduling issue and like playing chicken, and the bigger movie clearly won. Because what's Lily Rabe going to do about it? I hope she has a big role in this Shakespeare in the Park film. Shakespeare in the Park production. It's not even a film. The fact that it's only Hamish Linklater, she's not going to be making any big connections with big talent. Maybe it speaks to where she wants to take her career. Maybe she feels that she's too genre-y. I don't know. Her management team obviously had a big discussion about this. But I guess the bottom line is that there's no loyalty and there's really no contracts in Hollywood. So it's really the Wild West out there. Loyalty, because I said that because, there is loyalty between people, but the bottom line is people want to make money, so if it's in their interest to do business with you, they will. So you never have anyone totally shut you off, as I said with that yes and no article. And then as far as contracts go, since nobody wants to be litigious, especially, I think the big loser there is the talent, the free agents, because the studios, if the studio sues you, you did something wrong. The studio is not a problem maker. You're just not fulfilling your end of the deal. But if talent were to sue, they become litigious and a big red flag for going forward. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of problems with safety issues, because everybody's afraid to speak up. The studios to some degree are a little bit like the mob. So yes, Hollywood is a crazy place where anything can happen. And again, just like we were speaking earlier about who is the star here, it's interesting that Hunger Games, the producers there and Lionsgate Summit feel that it's not crucial to keep the same actress. So, I guess they looked at Lily Rabe's performance and weren't like, boy, is she going to have a ton of fans off of this. They were like, it's a very small role, and they were like, we can replace her. It will not overall hurt our franchise. So that's another thing that actors have to worry about, that they have less of a hold, a grip on their roles, because actors are no longer the most important thing on the screen. So what do you guys think? Does it bother you? We've been talking a lot about actors acting in multiple cinematic comic book universes and how that's distracting. How do you feel when multiple actors play the same role? Does that distract you? Or are you totally able to suspend that aspect here as well? Write your thoughts down below. I hope that you liked my answer case, KTV, and Bamboo, who seconded it. It's a very complicated situation, but I hope it sheds some light on it. And thank you very much for asking your question. So write down below what you thought of today's top stories, the viewer question, and anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, any questions you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.